The sounds below rain had been falling over Florence since the moment Ethan Walker stepped out of the taxi. Not the violent kind of rain that crashes against rooftops and floods the streets in minutes. This rain was softer, older somehow. It drifted through the narrow stone alleys, like a memory refusing to disappear. The ancient city glowed beneath it, golden windows trembling behind wet glass distant church bells, echoing through the dark reflections of amber streetlights, stretching across the cobblestones, like rivers of melted fire. Ethan stood under the black umbrella, outside the apartment building, and looked up. The Airbnb photographs had made the place seem charming. In reality, it looked forgotten. 5 floors of faded yellow stone leaned silently over the alleyway. Iron balconies hung above them like rusted cages, and ivy crawled across the cracked walls as if the building itself were slowly being swallowed by time. "This is it?" Clara asked quietly beside him. Her voice carried the exhaustion of the flight. Ethan nodded. A cold wind moved through the alley. For a brief second, he thought he saw movement behind one of the upstairs windows. Someone standing there, watching. But when he looked carefully, there was nothing except darkness and rain sliding down the glass. Clara stepped closer to him and rubbed her arms. "I suddenly hate this place," she muttered. Ethan laughed softly. "That's because you've watched too many horror films." "No," she whispered, staring upward. "It feels wrong." The front entrance opened with a metallic click after Ethan entered the access code from his phone. No receptionist, no host, no sound, except the rain behind them. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust, old wood, and something else Ethan couldn't identify. Something warm and stale beneath the colder scent of stone. The lobby lights flickered weakly overhead. At the far end stood an old elevator with folding iron doors. Beside it was a staircase disappearing upward into darkness. "Very welcoming," Clara said. Ethan smirked, though uneasiness had already begun settling quietly inside his chest. The elevator groaned loudly as it carried them upward. Second floor. Third floor. The lights inside flickered once, then twice. Clara glanced at him. "Did you feel that?" "What?" The elevator stopped. "It's old." "No," she said softly. "For a second it felt like we went down." Ethan frowned. The elevator continued climbing until it finally opened onto the 4th floor with a violent metallic screech. The hallway beyond was long and narrow. Too narrow. A single yellow light glowed at the center of the ceiling, leaving most of the corridor drowned in shadow. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally loud as they walked toward apartment 47. Somewhere far away inside the building, plumbing groaned softly through the walls. Clara suddenly stopped walking. "What now?" Ethan asked. She stared down the hallway behind them. "I thought someone was standing there." Ethan turned. The hallway was empty. "See?" He smiled. "Too many horror films." But Clara didn't smile back. Inside the apartment was surprisingly beautiful. White walls, tall windows, dark wooden floors polished smooth with age. Antique lamps cast warm golden light across the rooms, and shelves filled with old Italian books lined the walls. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee beans. Beyond the glass balcony doors, Florence stretched endlessly beneath the rain. For the first time all evening, Ethan relaxed. "This place is amazing," he admitted. Clara wandered slowly through the apartment. The bedroom sat at the end of a short hallway. Beside, it was a narrow storage room and a small bathroom with cracked marble tiles. Everything looked clean. Almost too clean, as though nobody truly lived there. Ethan set down his camera bag and exhaled deeply. He had needed this trip more than he admitted. The last year had hollowed him out piece by piece. The breakup, the insomnia, the endless photography assignments that paid well enough to survive, but never enough to feel alive. By 31, Ethan had begun feeling like a ghost drifting from city to city, taking photographs of places he no longer experienced emotionally. Clara understood that better than anyone. They had met in London 2 years earlier during a gallery exhibition, and somehow remained close ever since. Not lovers, not exactly friends. Something unfinished between those two things. That night they opened wine and sat beside the balcony doors, listening to the rain. Florence glowed outside like a dream trapped underwater. "You ever think about disappearing?" Clara suddenly asked. Ethan looked at her. "What kind of question is that?" She shrugged slightly. "Sometimes I think certain cities make people vanish emotionally. like they slowly absorb you. You sound tired. I am tired. Silence settled between them. Then a loud scraping noise echoed beneath the floor. Both of them froze. It sounded unmistakable, like a chair being dragged slowly across wood. Clara stared downward. Ethan laughed nervously. Old building. The sound came again. Longer this time. "Screa," Clara whispered. "That's directly below us." Ethan listened carefully. Nothing. Then distant plumbing groaned somewhere in the walls again. "It's probably pipes," he said. But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't pipes. The sound had intention behind it. Human movement. Later that night, Clara fell asleep almost immediately. Ethan couldn't. Insomnia followed him everywhere like a second shadow. At 2:46 a.m., he still lay awake staring at the ceiling, while rain tapped softly against the windows. Then he heard it again. Scrape. This time closer. His eyes slowly moved downward toward the wooden floor beside the bed. Silence. Then came another sound. Footsteps. Very slow. Directly beneath them. Ethan sat upright. The footsteps stopped instantly. The room became deathly still. He waited nearly 30 seconds before quietly climbing out of bed. The floor felt freezing cold beneath his bare feet. He walked slowly into the hallway. Darkness swallowed most of the apartment except for the faint yellow kitchen light left glowing near the sink. Another sound echoed upward. A muffled voice. Too distorted to understand. Ethan held his breath. Someone was talking downstairs. He moved carefully toward the front door and opened it slightly. The hallway outside was empty. But the strange thing was, the yellow hallway light was swinging gently, as if someone had just walked beneath it. Ethan stared into the shadows for several seconds. Nothing moved, yet he could feel it, that horrible sensation of being observed. Suddenly, a door, somewhere farther down the hallway, slammed shut. Ethan jumped violently. By the time he looked up again, the hallway light had stopped moving completely. The next morning, Clara noticed the dark circles under his eyes immediately. "You barely slept. I heard people downstairs. There is no downstairs." "What?" She sipped coffee quietly. "When I used the elevator this morning, I noticed something weird." Ethan looked at her. "There's no first floor button." He frowned. "What do you mean the elevator goes from ground level directly to second floor?" "That's normal in Europe sometimes." "No," Clara whispered. "Not like this." She leaned closer. "The building directory downstairs lists apartments on every floor except the one below us." Ethan laughed uncertainly. "You're turning this into a mystery already." But Clara didn't laugh. That afternoon rain continued pouring across Florence. The streets became silver beneath the storm. They spent hours exploring old cafes and bookstores trying to shake off the strange tension lingering between them since the night before. Yet somehow, the apartment remained in Ethan's thoughts constantly. By evening, the storm worsened. Wind howled through the narrow streets outside, like distant screaming. When they returned to the building, the hallway light outside apartment 47 was flickering violently. On, off, on, off, Clara whispered. "I hate this place." As Ethan unlocked the door, he noticed something strange immediately. A smell. Warm food. Freshly cooked meat and herbs. It drifted faintly through the apartment. "Did you leave something cooking?" he asked. Clara shook her head slowly. The smell vanished almost instantly. That night, neither of them mentioned the sounds. Neither wanted to feed the growing fear aloud. At 3:14 a.m., Ethan woke suddenly. Not from noise, from silence. The rain had stopped completely. The entire city felt dead. Beside him, Clara slept peacefully facing the wall. Then tap. Ethan's eyes opened fully. Tap. A soft knocking sound echoed beneath the floorboards. 3 slow knocks. Tap, tap, tap. Ethan sat up carefully. His pulse quickened. Another scrape followed. Then footsteps. Slow footsteps, pacing directly below the bed. Ethan climbed out carefully and crouched near the floor. The footsteps stopped instantly. His breathing became shallow. For several seconds, there was nothing. Then a woman's voice whispered from beneath the wood. So soft he almost thought he imagined it. "Please." Ethan froze. The whisper came again. "Please don't let them hear us." His blood turned cold. Suddenly, Clara woke beside him. "Ethan." He looked up at her pale face. Before he could answer, a child laughed somewhere below them. A small distant laugh. Then absolute silence returned to the apartment. Clara stared at him in terror. Neither of them moved. And somewhere far beneath the wooden floorboards of apartment 47, something slowly dragged across the ground again. The hidden floor. The laughter beneath the floorboards vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Then came silence. Not ordinary silence. This silence felt alive, heavy, watching. Ethan remained frozen beside the bed, one hand pressed against the cold wooden floor, while Clara sat upright behind him, pale beneath the weak amber light leaking through the curtains. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Then Clara whispered, "You heard it too." Ethan slowly looked at her. For the first time since arriving in Florence, he saw genuine terror in her eyes. Not nervousness, not imagination. Real fear. The kind that settles deep into the stomach and refuses to leave. "I heard the woman," he said quietly. Clara swallowed hard. And the child. Outside wind brushed softly against the old windows. Somewhere far below the city, church bells echoed faintly through the darkness. 3 in the morning. The dead hour. Ethan stood slowly. "We should check downstairs." "No." Her answer came instantly. Almost violently. "No." Clara repeated, shaking her head. "Please don't do that. We can't just ignore this." "Yes, we can." She climbed out of bed and grabbed his arm tightly. "Ethan, something is wrong with this building." He wanted to laugh, wanted to explain everything logically. Old pipes, neighbors, thin floors. But none of those explanations matched the whisper he had heard beneath the wood. "Please don't let them hear us." Those words replayed endlessly inside his head. By morning, neither of them had truly slept. Rain returned to Florence before sunrise, covering the city in silver mist. The narrow streets outside looked empty and ancient beneath the storm. Clara barely touched her coffee. Ethan kept staring at the floor. Finally, Clara spoke quietly. "We should leave." Ethan looked up. "What?" "We can book another hotel." Because of noises, her jaw tightened. "You heard a child laughing under the floor at 3 in the morning." The truth of that statement settled uncomfortably between them. Still, Ethan felt something else beneath the fear now. Curiosity. A dangerous kind. He had spent years photographing abandoned churches, forgotten hospitals, empty castles across Europe. Places people avoided fascinated him because they carried emotional weight long after human beings disappeared from them. And this apartment, this building, felt emotionally rotten. Like something terrible had happened here long ago and never fully ended. "We're not leaving yet," he said. Clara stared at him in disbelief. "You're serious?" "I want to understand what's happening." That's exactly how people die in horror films. Despite everything, Ethan smiled faintly. "You said that yesterday." "I wasn't joking." Later that afternoon, Ethan left the apartment alone, while Clara stayed behind reluctantly. The rain had weakened into a cold drizzle that blurred the city into soft gray watercolor. Florence felt older during storms. More haunted. The streets near the apartment were unusually quiet as Ethan searched for a small cafe he had noticed earlier. He found it tucked beside an old bookstore beneath a faded green awning. Inside, warm light spilled across wooden tables, while soft jazz played somewhere near the back. An elderly man stood behind the counter polishing glasses. Ethan ordered espresso and broken Italian before casually mentioning the apartment building. Everything changed instantly. The old man stopped moving. "What building?" he asked quietly. Ethan gave the address. The man's expression darkened almost immediately. "You should not stay there." Ethan felt a cold sensation move through him. "Why?" The old man hesitated, then leaned closer. "That place has history." "What kind of history?" The man glanced toward the windows as though afraid someone might overhear. "In 1978, he whispered a family died there." Ethan's pulse quickened. "How nobody knows exactly. Police said murder. Some said suicide. But after that," the old man lowered his voice further. "People began hearing things." Ethan stared silently. "The apartment beneath yours," the man continued, "was sealed after the deaths. Beneath ours," the old man nodded slowly. "They closed it permanently." Ethan frowned. "But there's no floor below ours." The man looked confused. "Yes, there is." A chill spread through Ethan's entire body. When he returned to the Airbnb that evening, Clara immediately noticed his expression. What happened? Ethan told her everything. The cafe, the murders, the sealed apartment beneath them. By the time he finished speaking, Clara looked physically ill. We're leaving tonight. No. She stared at him. No, she repeated. There's something hidden here. Ethan, I'm serious. He moved toward the hallway. The building directory downstairs skips the first floor. The elevator skips it too. Someone intentionally removed that floor from the building. Clara shook her head slowly. You're becoming obsessed, wouldn't you? No, she whispered. Because some things are better left alone. Darkness arrived early that night. Heavy rain battered the windows violently, while thunder rolled across Florence like distant explosions. At 1:47 p.m., the lights flickered once. Then again. Clara immediately froze. Did you see that? Ethan nodded. The apartment suddenly felt colder than before. Then came the sound. Scrah! The chair beneath them again. Longer this time. Followed by multiple footsteps moving slowly under the floorboards. Not one person. Several. Clara backed away from the bedroom. Oh my God! The footsteps continued. Steady. Pacing. Then came soft music. Old music. Muffled through the floor. A radio. Ethan's blood ran cold. Somewhere below them, an ancient jazz melody crackled softly through static. Impossible. Clara grabbed his wrist tightly. We're leaving. But Ethan wasn't listening anymore. He crouched slowly beside the floor again. The music continued. A woman laughed faintly beneath them. Then glasses clinked together, like people having dinner. Directly below the apartment, Ethan pressed his ear closer. The floor felt strangely warm now. Then something moved beneath him. A sudden shift, as if someone downstairs had walked directly under where he knelt. His breath caught, and slowly, very slowly, a single human eye appeared beneath a crack between the floorboards. Clara screamed. Ethan stumbled backward, violently crashing into the bed. The eye vanished instantly. The music stopped. Silence swallowed the apartment again. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Clara's breathing became frantic. We're leaving right now. Ethan stared at the floorboards, unable to speak. He knew what he saw. Someone had looked up at him. Someone real. Then the apartment lights died completely. Darkness consumed everything. Clara cried out softly. Ethan! Thunder exploded outside. For one brief second, lightning illuminated the apartment in white, and Ethan saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. Tall. Still. Watching them. Then darkness returned. Clara began crying. Who is that? Ethan grabbed his phone flashlight and aimed it down the hallway. Nothing was there, but the storage room door beside the bathroom now stood slightly open. Neither of them remembered leaving it open. The smell came next. Warm food, rotting meat, wine, and something metallic beneath it. Blood. Ethan moved slowly toward the storage room, despite Clara begging him not to. His heartbeat thundered painfully inside his chest. The door creaked softly as he pulled it open wider. Inside stood shelves of old blankets, cleaning supplies, and a wooden wardrobe pushed awkwardly against the far wall. Nothing else. Yet, something felt wrong immediately. The wardrobe. It seemed too large for the tiny room. Too deep. Ethan stepped closer. Clara stood behind him, trembling. Please stop, she whispered. He grabbed the wardrobe carefully and pulled. At first it barely moved. Then slowly wood scraped against stone. Behind it was a narrow door hidden in the wall. Both of them stared silently. The hidden door was ancient. Dark red paint peeled from its surface, exposing rotten wood underneath. A rusted iron handle hung crookedly at the center, and beneath the handle, someone had carved words directly into the wood. Don't go down. Clara backed away immediately. No. Her voice cracked. No, no, no. Ethan's pulse hammered violently. From behind the hidden door came the faint sound of the radio again. Soft jazz drifting upward through darkness. Then came laughter. A family laughing together, followed by the sound of silverware against plates. Dinner sounds. Directly behind the wall. Clara grabbed Ethan desperately. Please. But Ethan slowly reached for the handle. The metal felt freezing cold beneath his hand. For a moment, the sounds below stopped completely, as if whatever existed down there had realized he was listening. Then a man's voice rose softly through the darkness beneath them, calm, patient, almost welcoming. "You're late for dinner." The family below. "You're late for dinner." The voice beneath the hidden door was calm. Too calm. Not threatening. Not angry. Almost polite. That was what terrified Ethan the most. For several seconds, neither he nor Clara moved. The old jazz music continued faintly behind the wall, crackling softly like something trapped in another century. Clara's fingers dug painfully into Ethan's arm. "Please," she whispered. "Don't open it." The hidden door stood before them in silence. Dark red paint peeled from its surface like dried blood. The rusted iron handle trembled slightly beneath Ethan's hand, though he could no longer tell whether it was the door shaking or him. Then came another sound from below. A child laughing softly, followed by the clink of silverware against plates. Ethan swallowed hard. Everything inside him screamed to walk away, to leave the apartment, to run from the building and never return. But another part of him, the darker part, that had always chased forgotten places and buried stories, needed to know what existed beneath them. Slowly he pulled the door open. A cold wave of air rolled upward instantly. Not ordinary cold, dead cold. The kind found inside crypts and abandoned churches. The hidden staircase beyond disappeared downward into darkness. Narrow stone steps twisted beneath the apartment, like the throat of some ancient creature. Weak yellow light flickered somewhere, far below, barely illuminating the walls. And the smell, God, the smell. Dust, wine, rotting wood, cooked meat, and beneath all of it, the unmistakable metallic scent of old blood. Clara stepped backward immediately. No. Tears glistened in her eyes now. "No, Ethan. Please." But he was already descending. The staircase groaned softly beneath his feet. Each step downward made the sounds below clearer. The radio, the laughter, quiet conversation, people eating dinner together. It felt impossible, like stepping into a dream that should not exist. Clara followed reluctantly behind him, gripping his jacket tightly as thunder rolled somewhere above the city. The staircase seemed far deeper than the building should physically allow. Ethan counted nearly 40 steps before they finally reached the bottom. What waited below stole the breath from his lungs. An apartment. A full apartment hidden beneath theirs. Warm amber light glowed from antique lamps along the walls. Floral wallpaper peeled slowly from cracked plaster, and old framed photographs hung crookedly in the hallway. The air looked strange down there. Heavy, almost smoky, as if time itself moved differently underground. The jazz music played softly from a radio, sitting on a wooden table near the kitchen. And at the center of the dining room sat a family. 4 people, perfectly still. A father, a mother, a young girl around 8 years old, and a teenage boy staring blankly at his plate. The dinner table before them was filled with food. Steam still rose from bowls of soup. Wine glasses reflected the dim light. For one horrible second, Ethan thought they were mannequins. Then the little girl blinked. Clara gasped softly behind him. The family slowly turned toward them together. Not naturally. Too synchronized. Like puppets pulled by invisible strings. The father smiled politely. "You made it." His voice matched the one Ethan had heard through the door. The mother tilted her head slightly. We were beginning to worry. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Ethan noticed immediately how pale they were. Not sickly pale. Corpse pale. Their skin carried the gray stillness of people who had not seen sunlight in decades. Yet their eyes looked alive. Too alive. The little girl stared at Clara curiously. "You're noisy upstairs," she whispered. Clara grabbed Ethan's arm harder. "We need to leave." But the father slowly stood. His chair scraped loudly across the floor. Scrap. The exact sound they had heard every night. He smiled warmly. "Please," he said. "Sit with us." Ethan's pulse hammered violently. "Who are you?" The father's expression softened strangely. "You already know." Thunder shook the building overhead. The lights flickered. For a brief second, the room darkened, and Ethan saw something horrifying. The family changed. Their faces became broken. bloodied. The mother's throat appeared sliced open. The boy's skull was crushed inward. The little girl's jaw hung unnaturally low. Then the light steadied again. Everything returned to normal. Clara screamed. The father sighed sadly. "It happens sometimes," he said quietly. Ethan stumbled backward. "What the hell are you?" The mother finally spoke. "We're what remains." Silence swallowed the apartment. The radio crackled softly. Rain pounded somewhere far above the underground ceiling. Then the little girl pointed toward the darkness behind the kitchen hallway and whispered, "He's awake." Every light in the apartment flickered violently. The family immediately fell silent. Fear spread across their faces. Real fear. The father looked at Ethan urgently now. "You shouldn't be here tonight." A deep sound echoed somewhere in the darkness behind the walls. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Not human footsteps. Something dragging slightly with each movement. Clara backed toward the staircase instantly. "Ethan." But Ethan couldn't move. The hidden hallway beyond the kitchen had become completely black. No light reached inside it anymore. Yet something stood there, watching. He could feel it. The teenage boy suddenly whispered, "He likes listening to guests sleep." The footsteps grew closer. Thud. Drag. Thud. Drag. The mother began quietly crying. The little girl covered her ears. And then Ethan realized something horrifying. The family wasn't haunting the apartment. They were trapped inside it. The father stepped closer quickly. "You must leave now." "What is that thing?" Ethan asked. The father's expression darkened. He never left after the murders. A violent crash exploded somewhere deeper in the darkness. Clara screamed. The lights went out completely. Darkness consumed everything underground. The radio died instantly. And then breathing. Deep breathing. Very close. Ethan raised his phone flashlight with shaking hands. The beam illuminated the dining room again. The family was gone. All 4 chairs sat empty. The food remained warm on the table. But muddy footprints now stretched across the floor toward the hallway. Fresh footprints. Human footprints. Thud. Drag. Thud. Drag. Closer now. Clara grabbed Ethan desperately. "We have to go." Something moved suddenly in the darkness ahead. Tall. Thin. Wrong. The flashlight beam caught only fragments. Dirty gray skin. Sunken eyes. A long black coat hanging unnaturally from a skeletal body. Then the thing rushed forward. Ethan heard Clara scream as they both ran. The creature moved with horrifying speed behind them, dragging one leg violently across the floor, while producing a sound almost like laughter. They reached the staircase just as something slammed into the wall beside Ethan's head hard enough to crack stone. He looked back once, and wished he hadn't. The thing standing below the stairs no longer looked fully human. Its face twitched unnaturally beneath the dim, light skin stretched tightly across sharp bones. One eye bulged outward, while the other remained buried in darkness. But the worst part, it was smiling. A huge, impossible smile splitting its face almost ear to ear. Then it spoke softly. "Stay for breakfast." Ethan slammed the hidden door shut just as something struck it violently from below. Boom. Clara sobbed uncontrollably as they shoved the wardrobe back into place together. Another impact shook the wall. Dust fell from the ceiling. Boom. 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 Then silence. Absolute silence. Neither of them wasted another second. They grabbed their bags and ran from the apartment barefoot into the hallway. The elevator was gone. Not broken. Gone. Only a blank concrete wall remained where it should have been. Clara stared in horror. That wasn't there before. The hallway lights flickered wildly. Somewhere below them came the faint sound of footsteps climbing stairs. Thud. Drag. Thud. Drag. Ethan grabbed Clara's hand and they sprinted toward the emergency staircase at the end of the corridor. As they descended, every light in the stairwell began shutting off one by one above them. 4th floor. Darkness. 3rd floor. Darkness. 2nd floor. Clara suddenly froze. Someone stood below them. An old man. Tall. Wearing a black coat. Holding keys in one pale hand. The Airbnb host. He smiled gently. Leaving so soon, Ethan pulled Clara backward instantly. The old man climbed upward slowly toward them. His eyes looked empty. "Dead. You found the lower apartment," he whispered. "You knew," Ethan shouted. The man's smile widened. "Most guests never do." Thunder exploded overhead. The lights died completely. For 1 second, the stairwell vanished into pure darkness. Then Clara screamed. Ethan turned his flashlight downward, and the old man was suddenly standing only inches away. His mouth hung unnaturally wide now, far wider than humanly possible. Ethan shoved him violently down the stairs. The old man fell backward, silently into darkness. But even while falling, he kept smiling. Ethan and Clara ran. Out the front doors, into the freezing rain of Florence. Neither stopped running until they reached the crowded streets near the cathedral. Only then did Clara collapse, sobbing beneath the storm. Police never found anything. No hidden apartment, no staircase, no sealed floor. When Ethan returned with officers the next morning, apartment 47 looked completely normal. The storage room contained no hidden door. The building directory showed no missing floor. And according to the landlord apartment, 47 had been empty for nearly 11 years. Ethan and Clara left Florence that same afternoon. Neither spoke much during the flight home. Some experiences destroy language. Months passed. Then one night in London, Ethan woke suddenly at exactly 3:14 a.m. His apartment was silent, cold. He sat up slowly in bed and heard it, very faintly beneath the floorboards. Scrape. A chair dragging across wood. Then came the soft crackle of an old radio. And somewhere far below him, a little girl laughed.